Okay, so norepinephrine is another classical neurotransmitter, which is again, it means that it was one of the early neurotransmitters that was identified, so classical in a historical sense. It's also a monoamine neurotransmitter, which means that it has a single amino group, as does dopamine and serotonin, which means that collectively those three neurotransmitters, the monoamines, right, are synthesized, from like all neurotransmitters, a widely available raw material. And in the case of the monoamines, it's going to be an amino acid, one of the building blocks of proteins. So there's an amino group, an NH2 group that you're going to see on norepinephrine, the same way you see it on, serotonin and you see it on dopamine. Norepinephrine, however, is also a catecholamine, right? Because like dopamine, another catecholamine, it's synthesized from the amino acid tyrosine. So dopamine and norepinephrine are synthesized from the same widely available amino acid, raw material, the amino acid called tyrosine. And tyrosine, remember, has a catechol ring. So not only is there an amino group, but there's also a catechol ring on both dopamine and norepinephrine. Now, interestingly, norepinephrine is actually synthesized from dopamine. So in dopaminergic neurons, right, there are two synthesizing enzymes that are expressed, right, that are present, two genes, right, that code for these two synthesizing enzymes. And in the dopaminergic neuron, they're going to take the tyrosine amino acid and convert it first, remember, to L-DOPA. And then the second synthesizing enzyme is going to grab the L-DOPA and turn it into dopamine, right? Well, in a norepinephrine releasing neuron, which I'll explain is called a noradrenergic neuron, there is one additional synthesizing enzyme present. So a third gene is expressed. And this is another enzyme that will take the dopamine and convert it, synthesize norepinephrine out of that. So norepinephrine releasing neurons are actually referred to as noradrenergic. And that's because norepinephrine, right, is how a lot of North American researchers refer to this particular neurotransmitter. And then norepinephrine can be converted by another enzyme, synthesizing enzyme, a fourth synthesizing enzyme, into a chemical called epinephrine. But epinephrine is also known, has another name, it's called adrenaline. And it's released from the adrenal glands as part of the, sort of fight or flight, stress response, the HPA axis stress response. And in the European side of things, they tend to refer to adrenaline instead of epinephrine, and they also tend to refer to noradrenaline instead of norepinephrine. So you can talk about norepinephrine or noradrenaline. It's the same chemical. So sometimes you'll see it abbreviated NE for norepinephrine, and sometimes you'll see it abbreviated NA for noradrenaline. And then, with one extra synthesis step, another enzyme, you can take norepinephrine, noradrenaline, the same thing, to epinephrine or adrenaline, right, which is a hormone which is going to be released into the bloodstream as part of a stress response. So the terminology, how you refer to a neuron whose primary neurotransmitter is norepinephrine or noradrenaline, because they're the same thing, NE or NA, we tend to call it a noradrenergic neuron. Cheers.